Okay, today we are here at the Romford Film Festival with Sam Weeks, who is the director and co-writer of Home Fires. Thank you for being here, Sam.
Thank you very much. Sir.
Could you tell us a little bit about what Home Fires is all about?
Home Fires, its story is quite simple, really. It's about an old man recounting his time in World War One. And we see just his psychological experience and how he interacts with his home life, his love life, and the war and the trenches life.
Okay, fantastic. And what gave you the inspiration to write this story? Because this story's been done a lot of times, although you touch upon many issues in your film. What was the inspiration for the story?
Well, at that time, I was thinking, what shall I do? I wanted to either be an actor or a filmmaker, and so far I couldn't quite get the acting thing going. I sort of felt perhaps, I always seem to play like these sort of villainous roles. I'm okay for theatre, but not so much for film. And so I thought, okay, I want to go into filmmaking, but of course, previous to that, all I had done is made films at school, and they're laughable now, but of course they're all sort of learning curves. And so I thought, right, I really need to make something to bring me into light, to show people that I am capable of doing some grand things. And one day, and it's a really strange story, my dad was in the conservatory, and I walked in, and they were talking about, I think it was soldiers drowning in mud. And for some reason, I thought, that's really horrific. Like, just imagine you're trying to not only be in a battle, but you're also drowning whilst you're just trying to, get out and fight. And I just said, what's that about, Dad? And he said, well, it's the Battle of the Somme. And so that got me really interested, because from a really young age, I had thought, I love huge, big Hollywood movies. Titanic, like all those big things. And I thought, I really want to try something like that. And I know my parents will kill me, but I really want to try something like that. And so what ended up happening is I just thought, okay, I've got a good camera, a Blackmagic Ursa Mini Pro. I know I want to make something good. I know that I don't have all the right budget to make things accurate, but I can at least try to get the emotion right, which to me is the most important thing. That feeling, that sort of that thing, pressed on these poor people's heads as they went into war. And so I started small. I thought, okay, I'll make a short film. And I filmed all the farm scenes first, because I thought they'll be fine, they'll be good. And I filmed them, and I thought, this is great, all's good. And I sort of brought my friends in as well, because I've been in the theatre, my local theatre. Most of the actors are actually friends of mine. And so I shot that, and I thought, that's great. How do I top that? Because the footage looked so good to me. So I thought, well, what I'll do, I don't want to do this for years. I will shoot the trenches and all the battlefield stuff at Christmas in December. And any other little bits we'll finish off, and we'll edit throughout the year. And what ended up happening is I built like a little mound of earth in the garage. And I filmed just a couple of quick shots of this main character climbing over hurdles and things. And it was meant to be the main battle of the movie, but it turned out being the first battle. And then I thought, wow, that's even better than what I filmed before. I've got to top that now. And I thought, okay, what do I do next? Well, I've already got this mound of earth in the garage, and I went to Dad very sheepishly. Do you mind if I build a trench in the garage? And yeah, I can't remember what happened next, but I got the rights to build the trench in the garage. And we went to home base and, got all these extra bits of woods. We ordered sandbags and loads of bits and pieces like that, built the trench up. And it was great, and I thought it looked spectacular. I was a bit worried at first because of things like lighting, because I thought it looked so good, but you need a lot of light for things like the Blackmagic cameras. So I thought, okay, how am I supposed to do this? This might be quite difficult. But after many tests, we did some stuff, and I was sort of learning as I was going along. And then after that, it just slowly progressed into an even bigger piece, I just went, okay, I've got that, story's looking okay, right, what else do I need? I need his home life, I need to film the scene with his mother, we need to know every aspect of his life, I need to film his training. And the last thing is I thought, okay, so everything in the film is very close up, very small. I thought I really, really need to have something that's big and wide so that from an audience's perspective, they're like, okay, that's the reason why everything's so small, almost like a semi-excuse for why everything's shot sort of low down. And then again, I remember sort of, because my dad knows some people with farmland, and I said, oh, why don't we film on this farmland? That sort of didn't really work out. And we were sitting at a table one day having dinner, and I said, what about if we build it in the garden? And he said, okay, well, it'll have to be on these dates because Mum's away on those dates, so she won't be able to see all the horrible stuff that you've done. And we were we weren't destroying the garden per se. We were just putting down tarpaulin, bringing in 4 tons of earth, building little props. Yeah, no, I know that, haven't you? Building little props, bits and pieces. We even put all this blue I think it was bed sheeting, but we wanted the blue screen around the set. And what ended up sort of happening for that is, unfortunately, because I'd never used blue screen before, I was like, oh, you just put it up and, they take it out. We had to use rotoscope later. But yeah, that was a lot of rambling, but that's basically how it all came apart. I just kept thinking I need to go bigger and bigger and better and prove that I can do it, and that was the result.
And do it you did.
I think I did.
If that's a sentence of any standards. Now, you mentioned several things in there, and if I can come back to the script, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
So the script, how long was it? When you got a first draft, how long was the script?
Well, so I wrote my first draft in what I call a bored evening. So there's a lot of times where I just have nothing to do, and I thought, okay, I want to do this film. Let me write a script. And the script was originally about 30 pages long, and it all took place in the trenches, nothing outside of the trenches. But then as filming sort of kept progressing, I thought I almost had the script as a baseline and kept sort of adding to it. And by the time we got the whole film, this thing in the back of my mind, I always thought, well, we kind of need a narrator because it's almost like a storybook. You've got the pictures, but you need the words, you need the dialogue. And so, I knew I'd done some of what I'd written before, but I thought, okay, I really, really need to grab something to hold it together, to pull it together. And I thought this idea early on, and I'm sure it's been done before, but of this older chap, the older version of the main character, telling the story as it slowly progresses on. And I was like, well, how am I supposed to write that? Because I will admit, I'm not the best writer. I'm more of a visual person. I prefer the look of things and the feel of things. I don't always think that people need to say an awful lot to convey something. And so I was like, okay, well, I have a brother. He's written a book. I'll get him to do it because I know if I write it, it's going to be really cheesy. So I asked him. He wrote something really well. The main actor actually introduced me to the older version of himself because they'd worked in a local theatre production together. He liked the script, and thank goodness he did, because if I sent him something, he had pages of notes. And yeah, we shot his scene in one day. By that point, I was really tired because by that point, I had been making the film from September of 2017 to December of 2018, and I had been shooting all that time and editing and whatnot, and I just thought, all right, I'm really tired. I'm not sure if I can go on much longer, with this, and so I got to find a way to film this nice and quick so we can premiere it this year, and so that's how that bit came about.
Thank you, and that's your brother Ryan that was who co-wrote this with you. Now, you got the surface story. The surface story is a recollection of that event that happened in the trenches at the Somme there. But there's lots of subtext going on. Now, that subtext, was that always in your mind when you had the idea? So there's the subtext of patriotism, there's the subtext of the trauma that's caused through such events, the fact that later on the character Old Kip Fielding, who says, I can't remember everything. There's these blanks, aren't there? There's this almost romanticised version that everybody's, we're going to fight for kin and country. Well, it'll be okay. We're back by Christmas. Was that all there from the beginning? Did that evolve? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it was. For some reason, I really like world building. That's sort of a big part of that, and I really wanted to make sure that everything was sort of added in that sense. So there's lots going on. There's lots for the audience. I almost felt like, because even though Kip is the main character, I would describe his character a little bit like, and this might make you think, what? A little bit like Bambi. Because if you watch that film Bambi is the person that sees the world around them. So it's about his point of view. He is essentially the audience. And that's what I wanted, and I wanted like all these things to always be around him, all this slight corrupt energy to some of these characters, you know, and some of the things like how the officers just don't care about the trauma, and so they have such a big learning curve, you know, at the end. The colonel especially, you know, he comes in and he thinks, you know, well, you know, I've never been here before, it's just a load of kids, it's fine, I'll just chat to them, it'll all be fine. But then, you know, he slowly progresses to learn this is really horrible and this is really horrific. So yeah, it was originally going to be there at the beginning, but just the more I did it, the more it was fleshed out per se, you know.
Yeah. And I found actually that for me personally was a really interesting part. The fact that there seemed to be this class separation, this hierarchy, where all the officers above your regular kind of foot soldier who's going to go out there and basically get shot, seemed to be from an upper class. Well, that was purely intentional. Or was that a reality? Is that what really happened?
Yeah, so, well, I mean, it's been quite a while since I researched it, but a lot of the officers were quite higher class. I also felt that the officers should come from a place where they are almost people that are given an opportunity that they don't know how to handle. So these are people that usually don't do the handy work, and so throughout the film you see how some of them slightly start to lose their mind because they just can't handle it. They're not made for it at all. They are made for staying at home, riding the horses, you know, all those posh things, and so I like that sort of that point in the film, especially towards the end, where one of the officers, Captain Patterson, who you see throughout the film, is just not very good at taking charge. He breaks down, and that's one of my favourite moments because it shows that he has no idea what he's doing. He was just forced into it, and that's what a lot of them were. They were just forced into it, or it was either things like, we need more men, or let's go, this is going to be fun, you know, like a big amusement park in the day, but instead it ended up in this sort of cruel space, and it really tampered with everyone, and they just didn't realise until it was too late.
So, casting. Did you have anybody in mind? Did you actually do a casting session? Talk to us about the casting, because you've picked up, you got young Kip, old Kip, and Colonel Johnson.
Yeah.
They're kind of like your three big players.
Yeah.
Did you have them in mind, or did you just literally put out that you need actors and do some casting like that?
Well, so all of the actors in the film, apart from the old Kip, are actors I had actually worked with previously. And every time I think of a new idea, I always have them in the back of my mind because you know, it's good to always know people who are going to come and deliver for you. And so I always thought, well, in the back of my mind, and again, this is another weird story. For the Colonel, in the back of my mind, I thought, okay, this guy Alex, he's got a great sense of authority to him, and I originally thought he'll be a captain. But what ended up happening is the people who provided us the costume sent us the wrong costume, and they sent us a colonel uniform. So that whole colonel backstory is all improvised, because I was like, well, I can't pay for it again, this is low budget, we can't afford to shout at them and bring it back. So the fact that he's a colonel was sort of put into the story last minute, but I think it's one of the more stronger parts of the movie because it shows someone who's really high up and how distant they are and how he learns from it. Even though it's not entirely accurate, it's more of a what-if sort of situation. And as for the rest of the cast, the main actor, Harry Wells, who is really good, is actually on my new film, Steps. He was in a play with me. So it's as simple as I'm in a show with someone, I think, oh, they look good. I introduce myself. I say, what do you think of doing this? And then I just bring them in. And some of my friends actually were really nice because, you know, I've got to admit, they're all friends. I'm not paying anyone. So what ended up happening is I would say, I really need soldiers, and I would worry so much that we got this big battle. If I've got 3 people running across this ginormous set, it's just not going to look good. But everyone was so great, and I think part of the thing that helped was the fact that I shared pictures. I said, look, I'm building this big set. Anyone wants to come help, they can come help. And so a lot of the actors would be like, oh yeah, I've got a friend, just come in, all you've got to do is run and be covered in mud. But you know, that's sort of mainly how the casting went. It's just all either friends of friends, people I've known in the past, or theatre buddies. So that's it, really.
Yeah, great. Thank you. And just there, you touched upon budget. So independent filmmakers are always struggling to find budgets, and mostly it is like you say, you're pulling on friends. They're often not being paid. Could you tell us how you raise the funds, if you want to tell us that? Just for some advice, really, for us independent, low-budget filmmakers out there.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what. Here's something very interesting, is that I'm incredibly lucky to have people who back me. My parents are lovely people, and I think that sometimes it is a bit of a disservice because there's so many great young filmmakers out there who can really do it, and I'm sure they can do it better than me. But, you know, I'm just so fortunate enough to have parents that back me. But mainly it was just in the CGI department because in terms of everything else, it was brought in cheaply. So things like the trench, we just went to home base, spent a couple of hundred, because I also do put in a little bit of money of what I have without going broke of what I do with my work. So yeah, we built sort of things from home-based supplies, so the trench, and that was quite cheap. Where the money really went up was when we started thinking, all right, we've got to use CGI now. And I think music was the only other thing, but that's what took up most of the budget. And funny enough, actually, the guy who did our CG said, it's too little. Even though we paid in most of our 10 grand, he was like, it's too little. And we were like, okay, well, see what you can do. And you know, it took ages, but we got it in the end. So.
Great, thank you. Now, what was the biggest challenge in making the film?
Patience. Because here's the thing, when you haven't done anything and you haven't established yourself quite as much, and you make just random films on your little camcorder, which was what I was doing prior to that. People, you know, they're just like, is he a bit of a dreamer? And all the time I was making the movie, I thought, I really want to show it, because I really want to show people what I'm capable of. And then there were times where I thought, well, this isn't working, that's not working. Like the Colonel thing, for instance. I'm sure I would sleep up at night, you know, thinking, that's not accurate though. Like, you know, people will just think it's terrible. And so there was quite a bit of self-doubt in that, but I had to teach myself it's patience. You need to just be patient. You know, people wait a lifetime for these sorts of opportunities. People wait a lifetime to show their work. You don't always have to do things when you're young. You can do them when you're 40, 50, 60. You can even do it when you're 90, I mean, if you've got the energy to do it. But, you know, that was the biggest thing, is learning that patience. And I think now I'm certainly much more relaxed with it. You know, if someone says, I can't make that date, I'm like, that's fine, we'll swap you to that, I'm cool. If someone says, you know, I've got this, oh, this actor didn't show up, or this didn't do that, or the set collapsed, which it actually did several times, I'd be like, oh, it's fine, whatever, I'll just, you know, just carry on, because that's what you've got to do. You've got to have that patience, and that was my biggest challenge.
You said your brother Ryan co-wrote the script with you, especially the parts for Old Kip. He made a quote which said, I'm going to read it here because I made a note of it because I wanted to talk to you about it. Never such innocence ever before or since. Is that an actual quote, or is that one of his lines that he created?
I think that is an actual quote. As I say, to be honest, it's been such a long time since we shot. But my brother is very, very into poems and literature and that, so it would have been a real poem. Otherwise, I'm sure he'd be kicking himself, you know. But yeah, no, I believe it was based off of a real poem.
And back to a piece of dialogue, if you don't mind. Back in the trenches, it was the Colonel again, doing his rousing speech saying that God was on their side. Yeah. Is that research again, or is that just come from you as a kind of an inspiration for the troops?
Well, it was mainly a bit of a fantasized thing, if I'm being honest. I think at that point in the movie we had seen lots of quite horrible, grim stuff, and so I just felt sort of a big arousing speech was needed, and I went back and forth with the actor Alex Francis, who played Colonel Johnson, and we wrote something that we felt was accurate, but was a little bit romanticised, and it was mainly just to gain that feeling, you know, just to make sure that it's not all doom and gloom and stuff. We wanted something big and grand and inspirational, and that also comes into that whole love of those big movies, you know, where it's almost like a tiny little nod to that, if that makes sense.
Before we finish, I do want to say thank you so much for putting your film into the Romford Film Festival. And it's been a pleasure for every single one of our team to watch your film and experience it. But I would like you to speak about, you mentioned Steps, another film that you're making. Yeah. Could you tell us what Steps is about and if anything else is on the back burner?
Yes, so Steps, so basically after I did Home Fires, I thought, I don't want to do a film where I kill people anymore, because that is quite a thing, you know. I don't want mud, I don't want to be like up to my knees in muck, and I thought I'd always wanted to do something that was like a coming to age story, something that's like those sort of nice level movies, you know. And I really struggled actually for a long time, especially at the beginning of this year. I struggled thinking, what am I going to come up with? You know, because after doing Home Fires, I was actually really, really tired and exhausted. I needed a break. At the same time, my mind's thinking, I've got to do something next. I've got to show people that I'm busy. You know, I've got so many great ideas. And I just thought of this subject of homelessness. And I thought, well, tricky subject. You know, I'm one of the poshest people you'll ever meet. I've never been homeless. But I thought, okay, what about something that slightly incorporates it then? And then I do all that research and make sure that I'm telling the story correctly. And I started thinking about this film, and again, I called it Steps because I wanted it to be the progression of something, and I didn't know what it was. And I filmed some tests before lockdown. I wanted to get this almost like old-fashioned British sort of look to it, and so I brought everyone in. One of the actors actually is Tony Fadil, who's a really good guy. And I brought them in, and I shot this scene, these couple of sequences with these quite slightly, again, romanticised, because that's my sort of thing. Characters, you know, we have the young guy who's slightly drunk, a bit reckless. We have the old man with the raised eyebrow. You know, we have the local barman, the guy hands on his hip, and I really loved how the tests came out, and I was ready to shoot more, and then lockdown happened. But the good thing about lockdown is it made me think, okay, I've got to get the story nailed down because I'm not a very good writer. So by that point, and now, because of Home Fires, I actually have my own crew. So I have DOP, writers, stills photographers, you know, all the bits and pieces, who are, again, my friends who are my age, who are learning. And some of them are great writers. So for that, I'm like, I'll give you the story, but you write the dialogue. And so that's how it sort of came about. And I just really wanted people to have a nice feeling with this one, to leave it feeling happy, you know, and not depressed.
And are you shooting that now?
I'm shooting that now. I actually shot a scene last night, which is a little sequence during the film where the main character stumbles across this big fair, this big fete. So it's meant to be a bit of it's like a slight dream-like bit of the film. So we built half of this huge fete in the garden with all these lights rigged up, and had about, 12, 13 extras that we dispersed, and a lot of actors. In fact, Colonel Johnson is back as well. So yeah, we got some cool new things for this one. New lenses, big Zeiss lenses, wanted to get that good quality. Some more actors who have done a bit more actual acting professionally. You know, a few people from EastEnders, the Ricky Gervais show Afterlife, I think, Afterlife. And we even actually got, which was really cool recently, a permit to film down this massive street. So because I wanted it to be sort of set at this seaside town, I thought I need some like this cool looking like terrace houses and all these street people and stuff. And there's a street right next to me in Sevenoaks that doesn't look like it belongs there at all. We found this great company that gives out permits, and we got this big permit for this huge street. So, everything's slowly progressing with the filmmaking, and I hope that people walk out of it feeling happy, feeling inspired, because that's the sort of film it is. It's regular life, not ancient, explosions, big. It's nice and small, but with a bit of romanticised action there, if that makes sense.
We look forward to it very much. And thank you so much, Sam, for being so gracious to come up here
Thank you.
and have this interview with us. And thank you for putting Home Fires, which is a wonderful film, into the festival. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.